Saturday, February 11th. Now he started playing games. When the lift came down this morning, there was the usual bag of food, plus some cleaning stuff that Jenny had asked for, bottle of disinfectant and bleach, and there was also a large cardboard box. It was one of those packing boxes that supermarkets throw out or leave by the door for putting your shopping in. A big one, all taped up. It was Anya's turn to get the food out of the lift, but we were all there when it came down. We usually are. It's the highlight of the day. Anyway, we got the food out and put the box on the kitchen table, and then opened it up. It contained 6 bottles of vodka, 10 packets of cigarettes, 3 disposable lighters, several pornographic magazines of various persuasions, a syringe, a metal teaspoon, a small plastic bag full of brown powder, some newspaper clippings. We all just stood there for a while, staring at all this stuff, like fishes studying a worm on a hook, and I felt my heart sinking. I looked around at the kinds of eyes and faces I've seen 1,000 times before. Hungry eyes, hungry faces, empty heads, saying, "Gimme, gimme, gimme." I knew what it meant. I could visualize the man upstairs watching us all with a sick grin on his face, thinking to himself, "Right, let's see you working on that lot together." It was a smart move, I'll give him that. Smart and nasty. Fred was the first to crack. I somehow knew he would be. He stepped forward and reached for the polythene bag and a bottle of vodka, and then the rest of them jumped in and took the bait. Snap, snap, snap. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Anya ripped open a packet of cigarettes and scrambled for a lighter, and Bird grabbed a bottle and twisted off the cap. "Hold on," I said, but they weren't listening. Their eyes burned fiercely as they tore open their toys. I turned to Russell. "Do something." "What?" "Stop them." He shook his head sadly. I turned back to the table. Bird was taking a slug from a bottle, and Fred was dabbing his finger in the polythene bag. I grabbed his arm. "Don't be stupid," I said. "You've only just got off it." He brushed my hand away. "Come on, Fred," I begged. "Please." He just stared at me. "I need you," I told him. "I need this." "Why? Why anything? Why not?" "But—" He brushed me away, grabbed a magazine and some cigarettes, and marched out of the kitchen. I sighed and looked around. The table was strewn with ripped cellophane and torn paper. Bird had gone. Anya was sitting down, sucking hungrily on a cigarette. She looked up at me with a self-satisfied grin and blew smoke into the air. "Yeah?" she said nastily. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing." I've burned the remaining magazines. I was going to burn the cigarettes too, and pour the vodka down the sink, but then I thought, it's not up to me, is it? I can't make choices for other people. We all want and need different things. And besides, if I poured the vodka away and burned the cigarettes, I'd probably get beaten up. The newspaper clippings were mostly about Jenny's disappearance. There were a couple about Anya, and one about Bird, but the rest were all about Jenny. There were photographs of her parents, of the street where she went missing. There were articles, theories, suppositions, details of various suspects the police had interviewed, words of outrage from politicians and journalists. I didn't let Jenny see them. It would have only upset her. I burned them all. Then I went to my room and screamed silently at the walls. It's all about games. He's playing his and we're playing ours. His involves giving us what we think we want, our vices, or what he thinks will damage us, our weaknesses, and then seeing what happens. I suppose it's a bit like one of those artificial life computer games. You know, the kinds of games that let you play God. Yeah, I can see him liking that. He's bound to be that kind of person. An only child, probably. The sort of kid who spent all his time on his own, setting light to ants and pulling the legs off spiders. Yeah, I can see that. 10 p.m. Games. I've spent most of the night playing word games with Jenny and Russell. Tennis elbow, hangman, stuff like that. I wasn't really in the mood for it, but I didn't want to leave Jenny on her own. There's a nasty feeling in the air tonight. Fred's whacked out of his head in his room. Anya's sobbing drunk, and Bird's been stomping around shouting like a lunatic all night. It's nothing to worry about, really, but it's probably pretty scary for a little kid. So that's why we've been playing games. It helps to pass the time, and it takes Jenny's mind off things. Mine too, I suppose. Russell's really good with Jenny. He's got this twinkly old man thing about him, like he's wise and pleasantly stupid at the same time. I know it's only an act, and I think Jenny does too, but it's still pretty good. Like when Jenny asked him what he was. "I'm a natural philosopher," he told her. "What's that?" "A sort of physicist. I ask questions about the world, and then I try to answer them." "What sort of questions?" All sorts, but mostly the kind of questions we forget about asking when we grow up. Like why the sky is blue, why space is black, why stars shine, why we have two eyes. Jenny smiled. Why do we have two eyes? Russell plucked a loose button from his shirt and placed it on the bed about 1/2 meter from Jenny. Close one eye, he told her. Then touch the button with your finger. Jenny looked at him. Go on, he said. She closed one eye and reached out to touch the button. Her finger started wobbling. She frowned, then jabbed at the bed, missing the button by a couple of centimeters. Hey, she said, opening her eyes. Russell smiled. That's why we have two eyes, to stop us hey-ing. The night goes on. It's just me and Jenny now. Russell's face started looking a bit pale about half an hour ago. Then his head started nodding and his eyes began to close. I gave him a nudge and told him to go back to his room and go to bed. Will you be all right? He said. No trouble. Are you sure? Yeah, go on. He went. So here I am, sitting with my back to the door, talking to myself again. Jenny's in bed with the sheets pulled up over her head, trying to sleep. Outside, Bird is still stomping around, shouting his drunken mouth off. It's one of those nights. I've been here before, sitting in my room listening to Dad going crazy about something. Nights at boarding school, stupid stuff going on, nights on the street, crazy people fighting over cardboard boxes. I've had it worse than this. Sunday, February 12th. Today feels like a Sunday. I don't know why. Every day is the same down here. Same air, same light, same routine. Nothing changes. But for some reason, today feels different. It's got that Sunday emptiness to it. That post-Saturday night sourness. The smell of dried sick. Last night, after the lights went out, Bird kept up his ranting for an hour or so. Then he banged around in the kitchen for a bit, went to the bathroom, made some horrible noises. Then everything went quiet. I couldn't get to sleep. I just sat there, staring at the dark, listening to Jenny sleeping. She was making funny little breathy sounds, the unsettled sounds of dreaming. Ka-ka-ka, na-na-na-na. Sometime in the early hours, I heard a door opening and unsteady footsteps shuffling along the corridor. Someone knocked on a door. Then I heard a drunken whisper. I couldn't hear the words, but they didn't sound very nice. After a minute, I heard Anya's voice hissing in reply. Go away! Mumbling. No, just leave me alone! More mumbling, a drunken curse. Then footsteps stumbled back along the corridor, and a door opened and closed, and it was quiet again. Nothing happened the rest of the day. Nothing at all. Tuesday, February 14th. I haven't written anything for a while. No reason, really. I had a few things that I needed to think about. I wanted to empty my mind, sort things out. I just wanted to be on my own. You haven't missed much. The drink and drugs have all gone. The cigarettes have all been smoked. The party's over, and now we're all paying the price. Fred's gone back to howling and moaning all day, and Anya and Bert are hungover and irritable. The place is a mess. No one's done any cleaning. The bathroom stinks. The schedule's been forgotten. No one cares anymore. The evening meetings don't happen. We don't talk about escaping. We don't talk about anything. I've been watching the clock. I've been sitting down at the dining table with my hands resting on my knees, keeping my eyes on the clock, watching the second hand, tapping a finger in time to the seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just keep tapping, looking at the clock, looking away, tapping, counting the time in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, until I get it right. What you have to do is count quite slowly and add the word 1,000 to every second. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. If you practice long enough, you can measure the time pretty accurately. For the last few days, I've been counting the seconds, mentally keeping track of the minutes and hours. I've been checking my time against the clock time. That's how I know he's been messing with the time. It's quite subtle. He slows it down or speeds it up very gradually. For example, on Monday afternoon, I started timing things at 2 o'clock. By 4 o'clock, my time, the clock on the wall said 3:45. Okay, no big deal. I could have been wrong, but 3 hours later, 3 of my hours later, when it should have been 6:45, the clock said 5:55. There's no way I'd miscalculated by that much. The clock on the wall was definitely slowing down, and as the evening passed, it got slower and slower. Midnight came 2 hours late. I carried on counting through the night. Now that was really hard. I kept getting sleepy, disoriented, number blind. I kept losing it. But in the end, I'm sure I kept a fairly accurate account, and I'm sure that the morning came 2 hours early. It did. I know it did. I felt really pleased with myself for a while, like I'd caught him out. I'd sat down and used my head and worked out what he was doing. I'd put one over on him. Ha! Good for me. Linus the genius. The greatest thinker in the world. But then I thought, yeah, so you found out what he's doing. So what? It doesn't change anything, does it? It doesn't get you anywhere. I mean, what are you going to do about it? I thought about that for a while, but I didn't get very far. So I went to see Russell and told him all about it. Are you sure? He said. Positive. Sometimes he speeds it up and other times he slows it down. There's no set pattern. He does it at different times and at different rates, but he's definitely doing it. Well, Russell said. His face is getting thinner by the day. His skull seems to have shrunk, the skin sucked in like a dried-up balloon. The only part of him that isn't shrinking is his teeth. He looked at me. What do you think it means? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. He smiled. I thought you said you'd read my book. I have. Do you remember the chapter about time? Yeah. Well, sort of. It was a bit hard to understand. He nodded thoughtfully. Early on in the chapter, I mentioned a man called St. Augustine. Ring any bells? No, I admitted. Augustine of Hippo. He was a North African philosopher and theologian, one of the world's most influential thinkers on the nature of time. Many centuries ago, he was asked the question, what is time? And his reply was, if no one asks me, I know. But if any person should require me to tell him, I cannot. Silence. I looked at Russell, expecting him to go on, but he just sat there, staring at the floor. I didn't know if he was in deep thought, falling asleep, or waiting for me to say something. I hoped he wasn't waiting for me to say something, because I didn't have anything to say. What was there to say? I mean, some old African guy tricks his way out of answering a difficult question. So what? Anyway, I gave it a few moments. Then I said, Right. I see. Russell raised his head. Doesn't help much, does it? Not really. Look, he said, all you have to remember is that time doesn't pre-exist. It's a manufactured quantity. He paused, breathing deeply, as if the act of speaking had tired him out. The clock on the wall is nothing. It relates to nothing. It's just a machine. His voice trailed off, and he put his hand to his head. Are you all right? I asked him. What's the matter? Nothing. It's not nothing. Really? No, not really, I said. You're sick. You've been getting worse ever since I got here. Why don't you tell me about it? I might be able to help. I don't think so. How do you know? I might have secret healing powers. I don't know why I said that. It was meant to be a joke, I suppose. But it wasn't very funny. It was an ultra-moronic thing to say. He forced a smile to his face. Can you keep a secret? I nodded. I don't want the others to know. Promise? Yeah, I promise. He took a deep breath, then sighed. It's not what you think, he said. I don't have AIDS. Not that it would matter if I did, of course. Well, it would, but I don't think you know what I mean. I didn't, but I nodded anyway. It's a brain tumor, he said simply. A primary brain tumor. Grade 4 astrocytoma. I get very bad headaches. I didn't know what to say. I said, Oh. Russell just looked at me. What's going to happen? I said. Well, the position of the tumor. He put his hand to his head. It's here, deep within the brain. Surgery is too hazardous. The risk of damage is too high. What kind of damage? Major damage. Partial paralysis, loss of speech. I'm not sure what happened to me then. I went a bit funny. As Russell carried on talking to me, telling me all about his tumor, my mind began to shift. I felt weirdly out of place, awkward and uncomfortable, too close, too far away, too young. I can still feel it now. I'm listening to him, but in a strange, disconnected kind of way. You know when you're listening to somebody and your mind starts drifting away? I hear the words he's saying, but they're triggering the wrong things in my head. Like when he says partial paralysis. Just for a second, I thought he said corporal paralysis. Major damage, corporal paralysis. And in the same instant, an image flashed into my mind. The cover of an old comic book. The comic was Sergeant Fury, Dad's favorite. He's got loads of old comics. He loves them, collects them. War comics, superheroes, all the old Marvel comics. I used to read them all the time when I was a kid. I know them off by heart. I know all the covers. I can see them in my mind. This time, though, instead of seeing Sergeant Fury in my mind, gritting his teeth and heroically hurling a hand grenade, I see this decrepit old black man slumped against a bombed-out tank. His eyes are shocked white, and his head is shrinking, and a loose-helmeted medic is crouched down beside him, saying, "The position of the tumor, here, within the brain. Surgery is too hazardous. The risk of damage is too high." "Linus? Dad?" "No, it's me. Russell, are you all right?" I looked up, my head suddenly clear again. "You've got cancer?" "A brain tumor. Yes." "Is it curable?" He shrugged. "With the best treatment possible, I might have another year or so, maybe less. But down here, without medication, who knows? It could be a month, 2 weeks." The room fell silent. Our eyes met for a moment, and in that moment, I knew he'd be dead very soon. I said, "Is there anything I can do?" He shook his head. "I need painkillers, steroids. I have asked for them, put them on the shopping list." "He won't give you anything?" "No." "Is it getting worse?" "Some days are better than others. Some days." His voice faded, and I thought for a moment he was dozing off again. But then he took a deep breath, straightened up, and smiled at me. "Hey now," he said, "don't look so glum. It's not as bad as all that. Just think of it as a change of time scale. That's what I do. You see, if you take a line, a world line, a lifeline, if you like." He chatted away about different dimensions and relativity and stuff for a while, but I couldn't concentrate. I was too depressed. He's right, though, about time. The clock on the wall is nothing. It's just a machine that makes 3 bits of metal go round in a circle. The man upstairs isn't messing with time. He's just messing with the machine. The only thing the clock affects is the accuracy of the dates in his diary. That's why I got mixed up when Bird arrived. I thought it was a Monday when he got here, but he said the man had got him on his way home from work that day before, which I had thought was a Sunday, which doesn't make sense. But it probably wasn't a Monday after all. It was probably a Tuesday, or even a Wednesday. God knows what happened since then. How many days have I lost? Or gained? For all I know, today could be Wednesday, or a Monday, or Thursday. But like I said, what does it matter? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're only words. They don't have any real meaning. Down here is down here. A day is a day. The time is now. That's all there is to it.